The ICI, because it's an executive order, is by definition going to be weak. It's for public relations. My litmus test for President Marcos is who he is going to appoint as the next ombudsman. Make sure that the ombudsman is adequately funded. What I think the ICI should be focusing on is the study on the anatomy of corruption within the DPWH.
Magandang hapon mga kaibigan, this is Kaloy Conde again, and this afternoon I'm joined by Vince Lazatin, a good governance advocate who we have had here on the show, well, one time. I hope there will be more. But Vince, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Kaloy. Nice to see you.
Yeah. So the reason why I want to talk to you, of course, is that part of your advocacy in good governance, anti-corruption, and all that, and then we have this commission, independent commission on for infrastructure that Mr. Marcos signed via an executive order yesterday, and I wanted to know from you kung ano yung tingin mo dito. What are your initial reactions, and there may be some concerns, if ever, or what's the road ahead for this commission, and whether you think this is set up to really do its function. But let's start first with your initial thoughts on this one, on the setting up of the commission.
Well, my initial thoughts is here we go again. We've seen so many independent commissions and committees being formed to try to investigate these things. And when I heard that President Marcos was considering forming another quote unquote independent commission, my reaction was not positive. For reasons I'll explain a little later on. But no, my initial reaction, and still up to now, even after reading the Executive Order 94, I still have a lot of doubts and questions about the composition, about the duties, the mandates, and the powers of this commission.
So let's hear them out. What's kind of your top concern?
The top concern, Kaloy, is it duplicates the mandates and functions of the Ombudsman. And in a poor fashion. It's not even a good replication. It's not even a good counterfeit. It's a weak counterfeit. Kung baga nasa Viramol tayo, it's a Class C counterfeit. Okay. And the reason I say this, Kaloy, is if you look at the wording on the executive order, it uses words like let me pull it up. Sure. I was going over it. Yeah, it uses words like recommend and request, and very weak words.
Yeah.
If you think about it from a legal standpoint. Whereas if you look at the Ombudsman, which has almost exact same powers and even more, the Ombudsman shall direct, has the power to compel. It can compel testimony. It can compel the production of records and documents and evidence. The commission, the independent commission, can only request.
Yeah.
And
recommend.
And if a government body, maybe the anti-money laundering commission, or maybe even private banks, if they requested the bank records of certain officials, they can refuse. They can say, "What's your legal basis? We can't act on an EO," right? But the Ombudsman has that power. It can compel banks to divulge records. It can compel the AMLAC to produce data and information. It can compel witnesses to testify before it.
On pain of
Yes.
some punishment.
Correct. And the ICI does not have that power. So if somebody decides it wants to ignore the request of the ICI, then take it to the courts. We'll have to figure out whether or not that individual should or should not, or is not required to testify or give testimony or to produce documents for the ICI. So all around, Kaloy, is just weak.
Okay.
And
we can talk about later about what do you think about the Ombudsman and what it should be doing, but
that's another podcast.
That's another podcast. Okay. But I want to ask you though, I mean, compared to other commissions as well, don't they have the same kind of not passive but weak mandate?
And that, and this is why generally I don't like them. Generally, I don't like these kinds of presidentially constituted commissions and independent fact-finding bodies and all that because they suffer from the exact same problem. You cannot compel. You do not have the power of contempt. You cannot cite. The ICI cannot cite anyone for contempt.
Okay. So
If they
this is unlike, for instance, a special prosecutor like that, what they do in the United
correct.
States.
Correct. In fact, the ombudsman has the power, and actually, there is a special prosecutor within the office of the ombudsman, and that special prosecutor has the full weight of the Constitution and of a law, the Ombudsman law, which gives that independent, the special prosecutor powers. The ICI, because it's an executive order, is by definition going to be weak. It cannot compel, it cannot mandate, it cannot force.
Makes you wonder though why that is the case. I mean, in terms of, I mean, we all know what they're trying to do here. I mean, what's the problem, right? All the massive corruption and all of that, and the lives being lost. But what do you think is going on in terms of what happened there? Why are they pushing for this weak law, as you said?
I think it's for public relations. The president, I think, wants to be seen as being proactive on this, and I'm glad he seems to be very proactive on this. And I think my opinion is that the creation of the ICI is a bit of a misstep in if he's really sincere in terms of wanting to address the problem. As we spoke last time, Kaloy, in last time I was on your podcast, my litmus test for President Marcos is who he is going to appoint as the next ombudsman.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah.
Right.
Indeed.
The Ombudsman Martinez ended his term in July of this year, just a month and a half ago, and we are now right in the middle of the process of selecting the next ombudsman.
So, in other words, he should have just appointed somebody in the ombudsman's office instead of doing this.
Well, it's a little more. I think the ombudsman requires more than just the appointment of the new ombudsman. Well, that's the first step, because we are right in the middle of this. There's an opportunity. If President Marcos really wants to address corruption, not only in the DPWH but government-wide, then he has an opportunity here to show his sincerity in who he decides he's going to appoint as the next ombudsman. The second part to that, Kaloy, is that as the head of the executive branch, he should, in his next, maybe not for the 2026 budget, but for succeeding budgets, make sure that the ombudsman is adequately funded. In my experience, working with previous ombudsmen, Ombudsman Marcelo, to a certain extent, Ombudsman Gutierrez, and then to a certain extent, Ombudsman Carpio Morales, they all seem to suffer from lack of resources. The office is just not, in my opinion, adequately funded. They don't have the resources. They've gotten some support, for example, back in 2006, 2007 timeframe. The Millennial Challenge Corporation in the United States provided some assistance to the Office of the Ombudsman to buy some equipment, some, I wouldn't call it spy equipment, but what do you call that? Equipment to listen in and whatnot. So, yeah, so that's part of a whole package, I think, as regards to the ombudsman, not only appointing him the next ombudsman, but to make sure that the ombudsman is adequately funded and resourced.
One of the dangers here of the ICI, the commission being formed, is that, and I've already heard this morning, is that people are going to expect, for instance, other agencies of government, oversight agencies such as the Senate and the House, to set aside what they're doing and just focus on this ICI, on this commission. Saying one actually guest of a show this morning said, the Senate should just abandon what it's doing because the commission is going to be doing Mr. Marcos's directive. I see that as problematic. And why would you gut the function of other agencies? But what's your thought about that?
Well, the legislature, both the Senate and the Congress have a particular mandate here, and
of course,
that's legislation, right? And so all of these hearings where all this is starting to come out is in aid of legislation. So there is something that unique to the Senate and congressional hearings in regards to their capacity or their mandate to craft legislation to address some of these issues. So that shouldn't stop, in my opinion.
But the effect of that one would be for the if you know, the effect of that would be for them to actually stop investigating because yun nga, the commission is going to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, again, the commission cannot substitute for the legislature in terms of its mandate to craft laws.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that the legislature, through the Senate committee and the House committees, should continue with their hearings in aid of legislation. I mean, that's the ultimate goal there. That's the other thing, and you kind of alluded to it, Kaloy, is that the ICI may. I certainly hope if they push with the ICI that then the Ombudsman doesn't sit back and say, well, I'll just wait for the ICI to do its job and then we'll step in when they're done. No. It is incumbent upon the Ombudsman to proactively, as they say in legal terms, motu proprio, on its own, initiated investigation. Once stuff started coming out in the hearings in the Senate and the Congress, I would assume that the Ombudsman is starting to move.
But there's a real danger that can happen, especially if, as you said earlier, this is all PR. Especially if you have a weak ombudsman who will then say, okay, the president has created this commission, so let's step back. I mean, that's a danger there.
It is a danger, and if it was still the term of Samuel Martires, I would say screw the ombudsman because Martires, the ombudsman under Martires, was not in any way proactive in fighting corruption. So I would have been very worried. But again, here's an opportunity. Martires has retired. It's the end of his term. He's no longer the ombudsman. We have an opportunity, and the focus, and I'm a little saddened that all the media attention is on the ICI. And well, okay, the legislative hearings is fine.
Yeah.
But no one's really paying attention. I don't see much by way of news or podcasts or whatnot on the Ombudsman. Nobody's paying attention to this.
Let's talk about that then. I mean, you and your network before, you have been not working closely, but you have been monitoring the Ombudsman and how it's been performing. And as you said nga kanina, kay under Martires, it didn't really live up to its mandate. Now, okay, apart from appointing somebody as the ombudsman na mapagkakatiwalaan or what, and then adding, making sure that resources are there, what are the other things that can be done to make the office of the ombudsman really work? I know, for instance, the fact that, there are other offices within the ombudsman, under the office of the ombudsman for military and uniform employees or something.
Services,
services that are in charge with investigating police officers or law enforcers who are accused of various crimes. I don't think that's been functioning as well as it should. So, is there a structural problem within the ombudsman? Or other problems?
There are many problems. One of them is leadership. And again, as we touched on last time we spoke, Kaloy, in the history of the ombudsman post EDSA, there have been 6 ombudsmen, and in my opinion, there are only 2 that were really serious, that were really credible. And they were Marcelo and Carpio Morales. Everybody else was under the thumb of the appointing power or just did not care to address corruption. So that's 2 out of 6. That's 32%.
What's the metric there, Vince, if I may?
Performance.
Okay. Number of prosecutions, convictions?
Yeah, well, just sincerity. Okay, let me give you a very clear example. Martires, he has made public statements saying that the problem of corruption is too big for his office. They can't do it, whatever. It can't be solved. He has said this. You don't want an ombudsman saying that corruption cannot be solved. And the way we're going to do it is through thoughts and prayers. I mean, literally, Kaloy.
Yeah, he said
this is what he said. Through thoughts and prayers, through moral regeneration. Okay, so you have to throw Martires out. How can you do that, right? See, Gutierrez. I had a run-in with Gutierrez. We were not friends, let me tell you, because there was a case against the old man Abalos. Mega Pacific had to do, Comla had to do with, it's been so long, Kaloy. You're testing my memory. In Mega Pacific case, the Ombudsman was building up a case. They were ready to file it with the Sandiganbayan. Mercy Gutierrez steps in as Ombudsman, and within 2 months, they said, oh, you know what? With this Mega Pacific case, not an iota of evidence. They went from one step shy of filing a case to saying, oh, you know what? Not an iota of evidence.
Forget about it. Yeah.
Oh, come on, right?
Yeah.
So we put her to task on that, and we did. She and I, the Ombudsman, did have a falling out of sorts because of that. Well, I wasn't active in the anti-corruption fight during the time of Velasquez and Desierto, but by reputation, they weren't good. And then, of course, Martyr. So, that's a quick history of my opinion on the Ombudsman.
Well, you certainly have tangled with most of these ombuds people before. But let me, if we're going to cut Mr. Marcos some slack here, okay, he has done this thing, created a commission. Is there a way that this commission can sort of cooperate with the Ombudsman and, complement each other?
Okay, so Kaloy, I don't like complaining about things and bitching about things without thinking about solutions.
Okay.
And the thing with the ICI, I think what the ICI can do, where it's actually within the mandate of the Ombudsman, but the Ombudsman doesn't pay attention to this particular mandate, and that is to look at mismanagement, inefficiencies, and systems within governments and areas for improvement. What I think the ICI should be focusing on is doing a study on the anatomy of corruption within the DPWH. Why is corruption so persistent throughout the years in the DPW? What are the weaknesses? What are the vulnerabilities? So if the ICI have to focus on that, and not to bother itself with trying to compile evidence or get testimony from people, but to understand once and for all, why does corruption persist in an agency such as DPWH? And then make recommendations to the president on how the DPWH should be restructured and how to best protect it in the future from vulnerabilities to corruption. I think this is, again, it's within the mandate also the Ombudsman, but I think it's a function of the Ombudsman that's not paid much attention to, and I think this is where the ICI can provide a lot of value.
Yeah, because the evidence, the Ombudsman can take care of that, and even the DOJ, right? And so, my next question, Vince, is that we sort of touched about this before we started the program, but okay, right now they're focusing on DPWH, and we know that corruption in government is not, of course, obviously limited to DPWH. There are others. So what happens now if we get another set of exposés about corruption in other departments, DepEd, Department of Health?
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, Kaloy, and say that even if perhaps in more recent years there haven't been exposés of corruption in agencies like Bureau of Customs and Bureau of Internal Revenue, I'm going to go out here on a limb, Kaloy, and say there probably is corruption in those agencies that have not yet been exposed. So we don't need to wait for an expose to try to address the issue of corruption within these agencies. And again, the bulk of that burden falls on the Office of the Ombudsman. They need to be better at what they do.
Yeah. That's
right. And the other half of that equation, Kaloy, is the Sandiganbayan.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right. Let's not forget the Sandiganbayan, because the Ombudsman gathers evidence, investigates, and then files cases and prosecutes. So they are also the prosecutor. Yeah. But if you bring your case to the Sandiganbayan and if we have a weak Sandiganbayan, then you're not going to get convictions.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So what are we facing right now with the Sandiganbayan?
Unfortunately, I don't follow the Sandiganbayan as closely as I should. But again, series of appointments. I don't know what when the vacancies are happening in Sandiganbayan, but those are always very crucial. Appointments to these agencies are so critical, Kaloy. And we did a lot of work on the Judicial and Bar Council. The Judicial and Bar Council is the council that is responsible for accepting nominations for the judiciary, the Ombudsman, and the Sandiganbayan. And they come up with a short list based on their interviews and their processes. They come up with a short list, which they give to the president for his or her consideration. And the president is bound by the Constitution to appoint only from the JBC, what we call the short list.
Yeah.
And again, to digress a bit, the JBC is another area that needs critical reforms because they have done a terrible, terrible job. The fact that Samuel Martirez was at the Sandiganbayan, he passed through the JBC process. He became an associate justice of the Supreme Court. Again, he passed through the Judicial and Bar Council. And then when he was appointed ombudsman, he passed through the JBC yet again.
Mm-hmm.
And all those 3 times he passed their scrutiny. Now, I don't want to be, hitting on Martinez too hard here. He just happens to be the example closest at hand.
Mm-hmm.
But that has been true for justices within the Supreme Court, questionable appointments to the Supreme Court, questionable appointments to the Commission, the Court of Appeals, the lower courts, Ombudsman, Sandiganbayan.
Wow. Yeah, that's an excellent point about that's an excellent point about the JBC. I mean, this seems to me like it's a systemic thing, a systemic problem that needs much more than kind of a PR commission such as this. Last question, Vince, before I let you go. There seems to be some idea that this commission hinges a lot on who Mr. Marcos is going to appoint. The thinking is that if it's somebody with unmatched probity, independence, and credibility, then it's all okay. I mean, obviously, that doesn't address the legitimate concerns that you have, but it's sort of like personalizing this campaign seems problematic to me, given that what we're dealing with is a systemic, problem. I mean, I'm I'm trying to solicit your thought about that, but
did I miss the question? Sorry, I missed the question.
But yeah, I mean, personality-driven, kalalabasan personality-driven yung commission, and but if somebody, if he appoints, for instance, somebody who's really known for being tough on corruption, then everybody will probably say, okay, let's we can sleep at night now. Our ramparts will be good. Our floodgates will be okay.
Yeah, as far as so as much as I've said that I'm not in favor of this ICI, it looks like it's going to push through anyway. So, in terms of the possible commissioners, or these 3 commissioners, we are looking for people who are beyond reproach. I would avoid appointing any ex-DPWH officials. As much as I have high regard for people like former Secretary Babe Sing Sun and former Secretary Ping De Jesus, I have high regard for them, but I would not want to see them on the commission because it's just too close. And even if they led a very clean agency, as clean as the DPWH can ever be, you also don't want them. I would take on Secretary Sing Sun and Secretary De Jesus as advisors because they know the inner workings, but not as any of the 3 commissioners. Someone, as you and I mentioned prior to the going on air, we talked about someone like former Justice Carpio. I think he's a good name. I would want to see people perhaps from the NGO sector. I'm biased here, of course, but I would want to see someone maybe from the alternative law groups or Saligan or one of these groups that have clearly no interest in here except
no baggage.
The public, and no baggage. And then maybe the third one, I don't know, someone else from maybe an who knows, ex-government official or private sector person.
Someone who does not have a skin in the game as far as the DPW, obviously, right? Vince Lazatin, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It's been, as always, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And let's hope and pray. Let's hope and pray.
But I thought prayers.
Yeah.